You know El Chapo, the most notorious drug lord in modern history. But what if I told you his most dangerous legacy isn't the billions he made or the wars he fought? It's walking free right now, somewhere in the mountains of Mexico. Meet Jesús Alfredo Guzmán Salazar, alias Alfredillo, El Chapo's eldest son, heir to an empire built on blood and cocaine, and the man the DEA calls one of the most wanted fugitives in the world. Today we dive into his rise from cartel prince to international target, his shocking kidnapping by rivals, and the massive manhunt that's been chasing smoke for years. This is the story of Jesús Alfredo Guzmán Salazar, the ghost who inherited hell, and it's one you won't forget. Jesús Alfredo was born on February 15, 1986, in Culiacán, Sinaloa, the beating heart of Mexico's drug trade. But this wasn't just any birth. It was the arrival of cartel royalty into a world where power was measured in kilograms of cocaine and loyalty was bought with bullets. His father, Joaquín Guzmán Loera, known as El Chapo, was already building what would become the most powerful criminal organization in the Western Hemisphere. By 1986, El Chapo controlled trafficking routes from Colombia to Chicago, moving an estimated 200 tons of cocaine annually. His mother, Alejandrina Maria Salazar Hernandez, came from another prominent Sinaloa family with their own connections to the opium trade dating back to the 1960s. That made Jesús Alfredo cartel royalty from his first breath. The Guzmán compound where he grew up wasn't just a home. It was a fortress. 30-foot walls topped with razor wire, guard towers manned 24/7, and underground tunnels connecting to safe houses throughout Culiacán. The family owned legitimate businesses too, construction companies, restaurants, and cattle ranches that served as fronts for money laundering operations worth hundreds of millions. From a young age, Alfredillo was groomed for this life with the precision of a military academy. By 8 years old, he was learning to shoot with former Mexican Special Forces soldiers who had joined his father's security team. By 10, he was attending meetings where men discussed moving tons of cocaine like other kids talked about baseball cards. While other children were playing video games, Jesús Alfredo was learning the family business, routes through Tijuana and Juarez, supplier relationships in Colombia and Peru, and the brutal mathematics of the drug trade where a single mistake could cost millions or lives. His education was unconventional but comprehensive. Private tutors taught him English, mathematics, and business administration. But his real professors were cartel veterans who explained how to read people, how to spot surveillance, and how to make decisions when failure meant death. He learned that in their world, paranoia wasn't a disorder, it was a survival skill. He grew up surrounded by armed bodyguards carrying military-grade weapons, bulletproof vehicles that cost more than suburban homes, and the constant hum of encrypted radios coordinating operations across 3 countries. Luxury was normal. Private jets for weekend trips to Acapulco, million-dollar ranches stocked with exotic animals, and politicians who answered his father's calls within minutes. But in that world, privilege came with a target painted on your back from birth. Jesús Alfredo's childhood was punctuated by sudden relocations when rival cartels or federal forces got too close. Birthday parties were held in different safe houses. Christmas presents were delivered by armed convoys. Normal was a concept that didn't exist in the Guzmán household. By his teenage years, Jesús Alfredo wasn't just observing the family business, he was participating in it. His father believed in hands-on education, and the curriculum was unlike anything taught in traditional schools. At 14, he was accompanying shipment coordinators to remote airstrips where Colombian planes landed under cover of darkness. He watched as crews unloaded hundreds of kilograms of pure cocaine, learning how to test product quality and calculate street values. These weren't field trips. They were graduate-level courses in international drug trafficking. El Chapo insisted his son understand every aspect of the operation. Jesús Alfredo spent weeks with tunnel engineers who explained how to move product under the U.S. border without detection. He learned about corruption networks that stretched from local police to federal judges, understanding that in Mexico, everyone had a price. You just had to know how to negotiate it. The violence was part of his education too. At 16, he witnessed his first execution, a cartel member who had been skimming money from shipments. His father made him watch, explaining that in their business, mercy was often mistaken for weakness. and weakness got you killed. It was a lesson that would shape his leadership style for years to come. But Jesús Alfredo also learned subtlety. While his father was known for spectacular violence and public displays of power, Alfredo developed a preference for operating in shadows. He studied how legitimate businesses functioned, understanding that the best criminal enterprises looked exactly like legal ones from the outside. His father's associates noticed the difference early. Where El Chapo was impulsive and emotional, Jesús Alfredo was calculating and patient. Where his father sought recognition and folk hero status, the son preferred anonymity and efficiency. One former cartel lieutenant later told authorities, "El Chapo wanted to be famous. Alfredo wanted to be invisible. That made him more dangerous." When Jesús Alfredo was just 16, everything crystallized in a moment that would define his future. His father was arrested for the second time in 2014, dragged from a beachside condo in Mazatlan by Mexican Marines who had been tracking him for months. The arrest was a spectacle broadcast live across Mexico. El Chapo, the man who had tunneled out of maximum security prisons and evaded capture for over a decade, was finally in handcuffs. The images flashed across every screen in the country. The world's most wanted drug lord looking smaller and older than his legend suggested. At the detention center, as cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions, El Chapo's eyes found his son in the crowd of family members and lawyers. No words were exchanged, but everyone who was there remembers that look. It wasn't defeat. It was a passing of the torch. In that moment, the king was telling his prince that the kingdom was now his responsibility. In Sinaloa's narco culture, that moment was more than a father looking at his son. It was a coronation witnessed by hundreds of cartel members, government officials, and journalists. The message was clear. The Guzman dynasty would continue, and Jesús Alfredo was now its leader. The transition wasn't immediate or smooth. Other cartel factions saw El Chapo's arrest as an opportunity to seize territory and trafficking routes. The Beltran Leyva organization, former allies turned bitter enemies, began pushing into traditional Sinaloa strongholds. The Jalisco New Generation cartel, led by the ruthless Nemesio Oseguera, El Mencho, started expanding aggressively from their base in western Mexico. Jesús Alfredo took it to heart. Within months, he was no longer just the boss's kid tagging along to meetings. He was making life and death decisions, giving orders to men twice his age, and proving he had inherited more than just his father's name. The cartel world was watching to see if the prince could become a king. After his father's arrest, Jesús Alfredo went all in on the family business with a strategic mind that impressed even hardened cartel veterans. By 20 years old, he was already coordinating multi-million-dollar shipments and managing cartel operations across 3 Mexican states and multiple U.S. cities. But Alfredo developed his own style that was distinctly different from his father's approach. Where El Chapo ruled through fear and spectacular violence, Jesús Alfredo preferred psychological warfare and economic pressure. He understood that in the modern drug trade, the most effective weapon wasn't a gun. It was information, leverage, and the ability to make problems disappear quietly. His first major operation as a leader involved restructuring the cartel's fentanyl production network. While other organizations were still focused on traditional drugs like cocaine and heroin, Jesús Alfredo recognized that synthetic opioids represented the future of the trade. Fentanyl was cheaper to produce, more potent than heroin, and generated massive profits with relatively small shipments. He established partnerships with Chinese chemical suppliers who provided precursor materials, built clandestine laboratories in remote areas of Sinaloa and Durango, and created distribution networks that could move product from Mexican factories to American streets in less than 72 hours. The operation was so sophisticated that DEA agents later described it as narco-industrialization, criminal enterprise operating with Fortune 500 efficiency. Locals started whispering about El Heredero, the heir, who could move product with the precision of a Swiss watch and the ruthlessness of his father. But unlike El Chapo, who courted publicity and folk hero status, Jesús Alfredo operated like a shadow CEO. He held meetings in different locations every time, communicated through encrypted channels that changed weekly, and maintained a public profile so low that many law enforcement agencies didn't even have current photographs of him. In 2015, he was photographed at a family gathering wearing a $50,000 Rolex Submariner and designer clothes that cost more than most people's annual salaries. But it wasn't the luxury that caught attention from cartel watchers. It was his eyes, cold, calculating, and completely comfortable with the power he wielded. The image went viral in Mexico's narco-culture social media, cementing his status as the new generation of cartel leadership. His business model was revolutionary for the criminal world. Instead of the traditional cartel structure based on violence and territorial control, Jesús Alfredo created what law enforcement called a criminal corporation. He maintained legitimate businesses as fronts, employed teams of lawyers and accountants to manage finances, and used data analytics to optimize trafficking routes and minimize law enforcement interdiction. The numbers were staggering. Intelligence estimates suggest that under his leadership, the Sinaloa cartel's annual revenue increased by 40%, reaching approximately $3 billion per year. His fentanyl operations alone were generating over $100 million annually in pure profit, with product reaching every major U.S. city from Los Angeles to New York. His associates described him as methodical, where his father was impulsive, strategic, where El Chapo was reactive. One former cartel member who cooperated with authorities told the DEA, "Alfredo thinks 3 moves ahead. When he makes a decision, he's already planned for 5 different ways it could go wrong. That's what makes him dangerous." But fame has a price in the cartel world, and for Alfredo, it came fast and brutally. It's August 15, 2016, 1:30 a.m. The summer heat in Puerto Vallarta is oppressive even at night, but inside La Leche, an upscale restaurant known for attracting narco elite, the air conditioning keeps the atmosphere comfortable for Mexico's criminal aristocracy. Even though Culiacan was crawling with rival sicarios and federal agents conducting Operation Sinaloa, Jesús Alfredo decided to celebrate his 30th birthday at this exclusive establishment. The restaurant was a favorite among cartel members because of its discreet private dining areas and management that understood the importance of privacy for certain clientele. He and 5 companions were at a private table in the back section, an area specifically designed for high-profile guests who valued security over scenery. The music was loud enough to mask conversations. The drinks were premium imported liquor, and security seemed airtight. His personal bodyguards had swept the restaurant twice, checking for surveillance equipment and potential threats. 72 hours before this night, the restaurant had been thoroughly inspected by his security team. They had checked employee backgrounds, installed additional cameras, and established escape routes. The place felt as safe as anywhere could be for someone with a $5 million bounty on his head. What Jesús Alfredo doesn't know is that Jalisco New Generation cartel operatives have been watching him for weeks, studying his patterns with the patience of professional hunters. They've identified his favorite restaurants, tracked his security protocols, and most importantly, they've bribed key members of his protection detail. This operation has been planned down to the minute, with backup plans for every possible scenario. The CJNG team includes former Mexican Special Forces soldiers, experienced kidnappers, and local criminals who know Puerto Vallarta's streets like their own neighborhood. They've been positioning assets around the restaurant since midnight, using stolen vehicles and weapons that can't be traced back to their organization. 2:15 a.m., as they're finishing dinner and discussing plans for expanding operations into Central America, the lights suddenly cut out. What sounded like a routine power outage was actually the beginning of the most audacious kidnapping in cartel history, an operation that would send shockwaves through Mexico's criminal underworld. Armed men flood through 3 entrances simultaneously, moving with military precision that suggests extensive training and rehearsal. Customers scream and dive under tables as automatic weapons appear in the darkness. The restaurant's other patrons, wealthy businessmen, politicians, and their companions, realize they're witnessing something that could get them killed just for being present. Jesús Alfredo reaches for his weapon, a gold-plated .45 caliber pistol that had been a gift from his father, but it's too late. Red laser dots dance across his chest as multiple gunmen surround his table. His bodyguards, the men paid to die for him, are either dead, wounded, or have mysteriously disappeared in the chaos. Gunshots echo through the restaurant like thunder in an enclosed space. Chairs crash as people scramble for cover. Glass shatters as windows explode from stray bullets. The smell of gunpowder mixes with expensive cologne and spilled wine. In less than 4 minutes, it's over. When the lights come back on, 6 empty chairs remain at the private table. Jesús Alfredo Guzmán Salazar, son of the world's most wanted man, has vanished along with his entire crew. Blood stains the imported marble floor, but there are no bodies, just evidence of a struggle that ended with the complete disappearance of cartel royalty. The message was clear and terrifying. The Jalisco cartel had just declared war on the Sinaloa dynasty by taking their crown prince. In the cartel world, this was equivalent to kidnapping a head of state's son, an act so bold that it demanded either massive retaliation or complete submission. News of the kidnapping spread through Mexico's underworld faster than wildfire in dry brush. Within hours, every cartel member, corrupt official, and criminal journalist in the country knew that El Chapo's son, untouchable cartel royalty, had been snatched by rivals. It was unthinkable, unprecedented, and potentially catastrophic for Mexico's delicate criminal balance of power. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel, led by Nemesio Oseguera, El Mencho, had been expanding aggressively into traditional Sinaloa territory for months. Their organization was newer but arguably more violent than the established Sinaloa cartel, using tactics that shocked even hardened criminals. They had been systematically eliminating Sinaloa operatives, taking over trafficking routes, and challenging the old guard's authority with unprecedented audacity. Taking Jesús Alfredo wasn't just about ransom money, though the potential payout could have reached hundreds of millions of dollars. This was about sending a message that resonated throughout Mexico's criminal hierarchy. No one was beyond their reach, no matter how powerful their family name or how extensive their security apparatus. For 72 hours, Mexico held its breath while the criminal underworld prepared for war. Cartel watchers, government intelligence agencies, and international law enforcement expected all-out conflict that would make previous drug wars look like minor skirmishes. The Sinaloa organization mobilized hundreds of gunmen from across their territory, calling in favors and activating sleeper cells that had been dormant for years. Roadblocks appeared across 3 states as Sinaloa forces searched every vehicle, questioned every stranger, and turned northern Mexico into an armed camp. The Mexican military went on high alert, knowing that when cartels this powerful clash, innocent civilians die by the hundreds and entire cities can become battlefields. Government officials privately worried about a scenario where 2 of Mexico's most powerful criminal organizations would engage in open warfare in tourist areas like Puerto Vallarta and Guadalajara. The economic implications alone, collapsed tourism, international sanctions, military intervention, could have devastated Mexico's economy. Then came the most shocking twist in modern cartel history. On August 18th, just 3 days after the kidnapping that should have triggered the bloodiest drug war in Mexican history, Jesús Alfredo and his 5 companions were released unharmed. No ransom was paid. No territory was surrendered. No public concessions were made. They simply walked free, appearing at a safe house in Guadalajara as if nothing had happened. The release was as mysterious as the kidnapping itself. No demands had been made public. No negotiations had been reported. The men who had been expected to die horribly as examples to their enemies were instead returned to their families alive and apparently unharmed. Why would the CJNG risk everything, their leadership, their territory, their very existence, to kidnap El Chapo's son, only to let him go without gaining anything visible in return? The first story that circulated through Mexico's criminal networks was that it had been a case of mistaken identity, that CJNG operatives didn't know who they had taken until it was too late to back down. But cartel experts and law enforcement agencies dismissed this theory immediately. Operations this sophisticated, involving this level of planning and resources, don't happen by accident. The CJNG knew exactly who they were targeting. Another theory suggested that El Mencho was sending a psychological message rather than seeking material gain. We can take your son anytime we want, but we're choosing to let him live. A demonstration of power and reach rather than an act of war. This theory gained credibility because it fit the CJNG's pattern of psychological warfare and their leader's reputation for calculated brutality. But the most credible explanation came from DEA sources familiar with both organizations, intelligence intercepts, and debriefings of cartel members who later cooperated with authorities. According to these sources, the kidnapping was leverage for a larger negotiation that had been ongoing for months through intermediaries. The CJNG wanted guarantees about territory divisions, particularly in Jalisco, Colima, and parts of Michoacán, where both organizations had competing interests. They also sought agreements about trafficking routes through Pacific ports, which were becoming increasingly important as maritime smuggling expanded. Taking Jesús Alfredo was their way of forcing the Sinaloa cartel to the negotiating table with serious intent to reach agreements. Intelligence sources suggest that during those 3 days, high-level negotiations took place through intermediaries, including corrupt government officials, shared business partners, and even Catholic Church representatives who had historically mediated cartel disputes. The terms reportedly included territorial boundaries, profit-sharing arrangements for certain routes, and mutual non-aggression pacts in specific regions. Whatever the real reason, one thing was certain: Jesús Alfredo had survived something that should have been a death sentence, and that experience would make him even more dangerous, more paranoid, and more determined to never be vulnerable again. Today, Jesús Alfredo faces a federal indictment in the United States that reads like a masterclass in international drug trafficking and organized crime. The charges aren't just serious. They're the kind that put people away for multiple life sentences without the possibility of parole. The indictment, filed in the Eastern District of New York, the same court that convicted his father, contains 17 separate counts ranging from conspiracy to distribute controlled substances to money laundering and racketeering. But the scope of the allegations goes far beyond simple drug dealing. They describe a criminal enterprise that operated like a multinational corporation with revenues exceeding those of many legitimate Fortune 500 companies. Large-scale drug trafficking into the United States forms the backbone of the case against him, but this isn't small-time dealing or even traditional cartel operations. We're talking about industrial-scale operations that moved thousands of kilograms of narcotics monthly through a network that spanned from South American production facilities to American suburban neighborhoods. Prosecutors allege that he personally oversaw or coordinated shipments of fentanyl, cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine across the U.S.-Mexico border using methods that would impress logistics experts at Amazon or FedEx. The fentanyl charges alone are devastating. This synthetic opioid has killed more Americans than the entire Vietnam War, and authorities say Jesús Alfredo was one of the primary suppliers flooding U.S. cities with this poison. The indictment details specific shipments that investigators tracked through wiretaps, surveillance, and cooperating witnesses. In one instance from 2017, authorities allege that Jesús Alfredo coordinated the movement of 500 kilograms of pure fentanyl from clandestine laboratories in Sinaloa to distribution networks in Chicago, Detroit, and Philadelphia. The street value of that single shipment exceeded $50 million, and the amount was sufficient to kill every person in a city the size of Miami. But the fentanyl operations represent just one aspect of his alleged criminal enterprise. The indictment also describes cocaine trafficking operations that moved multi-ton shipments from Colombian suppliers through Mexican territory into the United States. These weren't opportunistic deals. They were systematic operations involving contracts, quality guarantees, and delivery schedules that operated with the reliability of legitimate international trade. The methamphetamine charges detail how Jesús Alfredo allegedly revolutionized the production and distribution of synthetic drugs in Mexico. Instead of the traditional small-scale laboratories that had characterized meth production, he reportedly established industrial facilities capable of producing thousands of pounds of high-purity methamphetamine monthly. These super labs used precursor chemicals imported from China and employed chemists with advanced degrees to ensure product quality and consistency. He moved drugs from Mexico into major U.S. cities using a network that would make legitimate shipping companies envious: Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, Atlanta, Houston, Phoenix. His product reached every major metropolitan area in America through distribution networks that included everything from commercial trucking companies to private aircraft operations. The DEA estimates his operations generated over $100 million annually in U.S. drug sales, but financial investigators believe the real number could be significantly higher. Money laundering charges in the indictment describe a sophisticated system for moving drug proceeds back to Mexico through a network of shell companies, cryptocurrency exchanges, and traditional banking relationships in countries with weak financial oversight. He used established cartel routes that his father had spent decades perfecting, but also innovated new methods that caught law enforcement off guard. Tunnels under the border were just the beginning. The indictment describes operations involving corrupt officials at ports of entry, commercial airline employees who smuggled drugs and luggage, and even a network of private aircraft that operated from remote airstrips in both countries. The courier network included everyone from truck drivers and airline employees to college students and business executives who were either bribed or coerced into carrying drugs across international borders. Some were willing participants attracted by payments that could reach $100,000 for a single trip. Others were forced to cooperate through threats against their families or blackmail involving compromising information. But here's what makes Jesús Alfredo particularly dangerous according to federal prosecutors. Unlike his father, who was known for violence and spectacle, Alfredo ran his operations like a shadow corporation. Clean money, legitimate businesses as fronts, and a network of lawyers and accountants who made sure the cash flowed smoothly through international financial systems without triggering regulatory scrutiny. The money laundering operation described in the indictment is particularly sophisticated. Prosecutors allege that he used a network of legitimate businesses, restaurants, construction companies, import-export firms, to disguise drug proceeds as legitimate revenue. The operation involved multiple countries, dozens of shell companies, and financial instruments so complex that it took federal investigators years to understand how money moved from American streets back to Mexican bank accounts. The U.S. government has placed a $5 million bounty on his head, the same amount they offered for his father before his capture. That's not just money. That's a statement that they consider him equally dangerous to American national security and public health. The reward amount puts him in the same category as international terrorists and heads of hostile foreign intelligence services. So where is the most wanted son of the most famous drug lord in history hiding from the largest manhunt in Western Hemisphere law enforcement? Jesús Alfredo is believed to be in Mexico, most likely within the state of Sinaloa or the surrounding Golden Triangle region that includes parts of Sinaloa, Durango, and Chihuahua. This region has been a Sinaloa cartel stronghold for over 3 decades and remains where many cartel leaders operate with near impunity, protected by geography, corruption, and generational loyalty. But this isn't just hiding. It's strategic positioning in territory that the cartel controls more completely than many governments control their own capitals. U.S. authorities and Mexican intelligence analysts have indicated that both Alfredo and his brother Iván Archibaldo use a sophisticated network of remote rural areas, mountainous terrain, and rotating safe houses to evade capture while maintaining operational control of their criminal empire. The infrastructure supporting his concealment is remarkable in its scope and sophistication. Intelligence sources describe a network of safe houses that includes everything from luxury compounds with helicopter landing pads to simple ranch houses that blend seamlessly into rural communities. These aren't just hiding spots. They're fortified command centers with early warning systems, escape routes, and enough firepower to hold off small armies. Each safe house is equipped with satellite communication systems, encrypted internet connections, and surveillance equipment that would be impressive in legitimate corporate security operations. Some locations reportedly include underground bunkers with independent power supplies, water sources, and enough supplies to sustain occupants for months without outside contact. The rugged mountains and remote ranches of northern Sinaloa provide perfect cover for fugitives with unlimited resources and local support. These aren't just geographical features, they're natural fortresses that have been modified over decades to serve cartel operations. Hidden airstrips carved into mountainsides, roads that don't appear on any government maps, and communication towers that carry encrypted signals across hundreds of miles of territory. Cartel factions often move through small towns and countryside, where local populations are either loyal, terrified, or both. In many of these communities, the Guzman name still commands respect and protection that goes beyond simple fear. Local mayors, police chiefs, and business owners have been on the cartel payroll for generations, creating a support network that operates like a parallel government. But there's another reason Jesús Alfredo can stay hidden that goes beyond geography and corruption. He learned from his father's mistakes. El Chapo's downfall came partly from his ego. The interviews with actors and journalists, the public appearances at restaurants and sporting events, the need to be seen as a folk hero. Alfredo operates differently. He's a ghost who prefers shadows to spotlights, understanding that in the modern world, visibility equals vulnerability. Intelligence sources suggest he uses a rotation system that would impress military strategists, never staying in one location for more than a few days. Private airstrips allow for rapid movement between safe houses. Mountain roads known only to locals provide escape routes that can't be monitored by satellite surveillance, and a communication network that changes constantly makes electronic surveillance nearly impossible. He's not just hiding. He's running a mobile command center that stays one step ahead of both Mexican and American law enforcement while maintaining operational control of a criminal empire worth billions of dollars. The operation requires hundreds of people, from pilots and drivers to communications specialists and security personnel, all of whom have remained loyal despite massive rewards for information leading to his capture. The Golden Triangle isn't just geography. It's a fortress built over decades of cartel investment, corruption, and social control. This region produces more opium, cocaine, and synthetic drugs than anywhere else in North America, and the Sinaloa cartel has turned it into their private kingdom where Mexican government authority exists only on paper. Local infrastructure serves the cartel's needs more than legitimate government functions. Roads that don't appear on government maps connect safe houses and production facilities. Communication towers that carry encrypted signals provide better coverage than official telecommunications networks. Businesses that exist solely to launder money and provide cover for operations employ more people than legitimate industries. The economic reality is that in much of this region, the cartel is the primary employer, infrastructure developer, and social services provider. They build schools, hospitals, and roads that the Mexican government can't or won't fund. They provide jobs, loans, and protection that official institutions don't offer. This isn't just criminal control, it's a parallel state that operates more effectively than the legitimate government. More importantly, this is where Jesús Alfredo has family, friends, and generational loyalty that money can't buy. His grandfather operated in these mountains during the early days of Mexican drug trafficking. His father built tunnels and safe houses throughout the region during his rise to power. For the Guzman family, this isn't just territory, it's home, and the local population treats them accordingly. The social dynamics are complex and go far beyond simple fear or corruption. In many communities, the Guzman family is seen as local royalty who brought prosperity to regions that had been forgotten by Mexico City politicians. They funded infrastructure projects, provided jobs during economic downturns, and offered protection from other criminal groups and corrupt government officials. Mexican authorities have launched multiple operations to capture him, including Operation Sinaloa, Operation Green Ice, and dozens of smaller raids targeting specific safe houses and suspected locations. But they face a fundamental problem. In much of Sinaloa, the cartel has more resources, better intelligence, and deeper community support than the government. When military convoys approach cartel territory, they're spotted hours before they arrive by a network of lookouts that includes everyone from children playing in the streets to shopkeepers monitoring radio frequencies. When raids are planned, someone always makes a phone call, whether from corruption, loyalty, or simple self-preservation in communities where cooperation with authorities can be a death sentence. The terrain itself is an ally that provides advantages no amount of technology can overcome. Thousands of square miles of mountains, canyons, and desert where a man with enough money and local support can disappear completely. Satellite surveillance is limited by weather, geography, and the simple fact that from space, one ranch house looks much like another. Ground operations are dangerous and often futile. Military units operating in cartel territory face the constant threat of ambush, improvised explosive devices, and coordinated attacks by forces that know the terrain intimately and have unlimited ammunition supplies. Even successful raids often find empty safe houses and evidence that targets were warned hours or days in advance. The international manhunt for Jesús Alfredo represents one of the largest law enforcement operations in Western Hemisphere history, involving agencies from multiple countries and resources that would be impressive in military operations. But despite years of effort and hundreds of millions of dollars in funding, he remains free while his criminal empire continues to operate at full capacity. The DEA has assigned a dedicated task force to his capture, working in coordination with Mexican authorities, Interpol, and intelligence agencies from countries where his organization operates. The task force includes some of the most experienced cartel investigators in American law enforcement, agents who spent years tracking his father and understand the family's operational methods. Technology plays a major role in the search efforts. Satellite surveillance monitors known cartel territories 24/7, looking for patterns of movement, construction, or communication that might indicate his presence. Electronic surveillance attempts to intercept communications, though the cartel's use of encrypted channels and frequently changing protocols makes this extremely difficult. Financial investigations track money movements through international banking systems, looking for patterns that might reveal his location or operational methods. These efforts have led to the seizure of hundreds of millions in cartel assets, but haven't provided the intelligence breakthrough needed for capture. The $5 million reward has generated thousands of tips from informants, rival criminals, and ordinary citizens, but most have proven false or outdated. The few credible leads have resulted in raids on empty safe houses and evidence that he had been present but left days or weeks earlier. Mexican authorities face particular challenges in their pursuit. Corruption within law enforcement agencies means that operational plans are often compromised before they can be executed. Local populations in cartel territories are either loyal to the organization or too frightened to cooperate with authorities, and the vast territory involved makes comprehensive surveillance nearly impossible with available resources. International cooperation has improved significantly since his father's capture, but jurisdictional issues and differing legal systems still complicate joint operations. Evidence gathered in one country may not be admissible in another. Extradition procedures can take years even when suspects are captured, and diplomatic considerations sometimes limit the aggressive tactics that might be more effective. But perhaps the biggest challenge is that Jesús Alfredo learned from every mistake that led to his father's downfall. He avoids the publicity that made El Chapo a target. He uses technology more sophisticated than many government agencies. And he operates in territory where his organization has deeper roots and better intelligence than law enforcement. Jesús Alfredo Guzmán Salazar inherited more than just his father's empire. He inherited his father's enemies, his father's targets, and his father's legend. But unlike El Chapo, who courted fame and paid the ultimate price, Alfredillo has chosen to become a ghost, operating from shadows while building a criminal enterprise that may be more powerful and certainly more sophisticated than anything his father achieved. He transformed from cartel prince to international fugitive, from kidnapping victim to one of America's most wanted criminals, from his father's son to a leader who has surpassed his teacher in every way except notoriety. Today, he remains free while his father serves life in a Colorado Supermax prison, a reminder that in the drug trade, sometimes the student not only surpasses the teacher, but learns to avoid the teacher's fatal mistakes. The manhunt continues across 2 countries and multiple continents, but Jesús Alfredo Guzmán Salazar remains what he has always been: a ghost in the mountains, a shadow in the desert, and proof that in the modern world, the most dangerous criminals are often the ones you never see coming. Subscribe to Inform Secreto to continue exploring the hidden stories behind power. Real stories told unfiltered, because what you don't see also controls the world. See you soon.